From the headquarters of FtS English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. At least 7 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli defense forces so far, and over 350 others are wounded as Gaza begins its March of Return protest. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are converging on 6 locations at the Gaza-Israel border as part of the mass demonstrations against Israeli occupation. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, hundreds of people have been injured since Friday morning by tank shelling, gunfire, and tear gas. IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot told local media ahead of the protest that Israel has created a sniper task force consisting of over 100 sharpshooters to counter the demonstration. Eisenkot stressed Israeli soldiers will use a lot of force to prevent any possible infiltration by Palestinians into Israeli territory from the Gaza Strip. Despite this danger, Palestinians refuse to back down.
Today is a turning point for our people in our history of national struggle and fight, and our way to freedom and return. Today our people from the whole nation, from Gaza, from the West Bank, from the occupied lands in 1948, and from other countries, are launching this new phase.
And there's still no word on the fate of 2 Ecuadorian journalists and their driver kidnapped near the Colombian border on Monday. Ecuadorian authorities say they are in process of negotiations to secure the safe return of the 3. But there is some concern about Colombia's apparent lack of cooperation in the matter.
The President of the Assembly and the Interior, Defense and Foreign Ministers met with the International Commission to discuss the attacks near to the Colombian border and the kidnapped journalist from the Comercio newspaper.
Out of responsibility, we are not making any comment. This is a negotiation going on between the parties. Any information could even put the journalists' lives at risk.
Several Assembly members expressed their views on kidnapping and the action that the governments involved should take.
It is not acceptable that while Ecuador is making great efforts, Colombia has abandoned this region, and they come and attack us. We cannot go in this region in Colombia because we might create a bigger international conflict.
As far as we know, they are still kidnapped, and we prefer to stick with the official information rather than whatever the Colombian media may say, because we want to protect the life of these colleagues and be very prudent.
So far, the release of the journalist has not been confirmed. Their families have been told to keep calm, and the authorities say they are confident that the journalist will be returned home. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Quito, Ecuador.
The National Electoral Council of Venezuela, or CNE, has approved the final registry for the upcoming presidential and legislative elections that will be held on May 20th. More than 20 million people will elect a new president, while almost 19 million people will choose the representatives in the legislative councils. For the presidential elections, all citizens of legal age are enrolled in the CNE, even those abroad. However, for the legislative councils, people who live abroad will be exempted from voting. Foreigners who have lived in Venezuela for more than 10 years will be able to vote. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro recently announced a set of new economic measures to help stabilize the economy. The issue of inflation remains at the core of Venezuela's economic difficulties. Freddie Gillingham has more on one of the main factors driving it.
Counting large wads of money in Venezuela has become an everyday ordeal. Venezuela's national currency, the bolivar, has lost its value at a staggering rate. Now, there is simply not much of it to go around. That's why paying by debit card is the preferred option. In an attempt to stabilize the economy and help curb inflation, President Nicolás Maduro has announced that he will be knocking off 3 zeros from the bolivar, a redenomination which is scheduled to come into effect on June 4th.
I've decided to take 3 zeros off the bolivar and take the old banknotes out of circulation.
Venezuela's existing economic problems run deep, but surprisingly, one of the leading causes can be reached at a click of a button. A website called Dolar Today Founded in 2010 and headquartered in Miami, Florida, the website has since grown in its scope and objective. From initially being a mere reference for the exchange rate of the Venezuelan bolivar, it now operates as a fully functioning media site, with an editorial line that would give Fox News a run for its money. Dolar Today's speculation on the exchange rate is based on the illegal trades made in the Colombian border town of Cucuta. For example, smugglers buy 10 packets of subsidized toilet paper in Venezuela for 30,000 bolivars. That means $1 at the official rate. They then take the toilet paper over to Cucuta and sell it for $10. This is profitable, but not enough. So now they decide that this $1 is going to be worth 120,000 bolivars, just because it benefits them. That means that the same $1 they can now buy 40 packets of toilet paper. This is how Dolar Today calculates its rates to benefit the smugglers. With over 1 million users daily, Dolar Today now has a huge influence over the population. Basic goods inside Venezuela are skyrocketing as a result of the fictional pricing. But as long as the US-based company ties its editorial line to that of Washington, it will not be going away anytime soon. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Former Ecuador President Rafael Correa interviewed Brazil's former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on Thursday. The two spoke about the current state of Latin America's democracy. Lula explained a flawed justice system is trying to prevent him from running for the presidency in October.
In Brazil, there is a pact between the media, the courts, the public prosecutors, and the police. First, they criminalize people in the media, and only once the person has been condemned, they go through the legal process. In my case, the media lied, and that lie was turned into a police investigation. The investigation was sent to the prosecutor's office and led to false charges, which were accepted by the judge, who passed a verdict, which was an even bigger lie. Then it went to a second court, which consolidated the lie. The whole thing was a lie, because they have to stop Lula being a candidate for the Brazilian presidency.
Current Brazilian President Michel Temer's chances at the upcoming election are rather slim. His approval rating has dropped to just 3% amid a series of corruption scandals.
In the streets of Brazil, it's difficult to find anyone actually supporting Michel Temer, a president who came to power following a coup against former leftist leader Dilma Rousseff.
It's lousy for Brazil, and it's the people who get hurt.
Unfortunately, he's only interested in ruining lives of the poor.
They're a gang of criminals, bandits, scoundrels.
After almost 2 years of tenure, the president has been taken to court twice for being linked to corruption, money laundering, and leading a criminal organization. Until now, investigations have been annulled, though there are indications that he has purchased votes from lawmakers.
They buy votes by giving money to parliamentarians. They have granted privileges to the military. They allowed the censorship of works of art to appease the evangelical parties. They wrote off the debts of millionaire businessmen, and they are delivering all that is necessary to remain in power while prioritizing foreign capital and banks.
Having a corrupt president in power who will do anything to save himself has had serious consequences for the people.
They carried out the coup to put an end to investigations, to make corruption more open, and, according to global research organizations, Brazil has never been as corrupt as it is now under the government.
This government has caused a number of social problems. Unemployment has increased significantly. Levels of violence have also increased. The number of people living on the streets has risen. A second major problem is the dismantling of the state through privatization, the cuts in public policy, the lack of attention by the state for people facing the greatest of burdens. And finally, we have this issue of disorganization with regards to internal politics.
Temer has an approval rating of 3% according to the polls and still aspires to be a candidate in the upcoming elections. The immunity of the office would allow him to continue to avoid investigations, but now that his closest allies have been incarcerated, it seems inevitable that a third complaint against the president will come about.
And still in Brazil, residents of the Amazon city of Barcarena, north of the country, are blaming their illnesses on pollution caused by a Norwegian hydro plant. The community has suffered from diarrhea, stomach pains, and itchy skin. A statement published on the company's website admitted that a local river was contaminated by their actions. The statement said the company discharged untreated rain and surface water into the Pará River. A non-profit organization which promotes public health in Brazil confirmed the river contained toxic metals like lead, cobalt, and uranium.
The factory arrived here just to kill us. It is bringing us only destruction and pollution. We are slowly dying. Everything is polluted. Barcarena is all polluted. The soil, the vegetation, everything.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
A man who inspired a continent.
Era un hombre demasiado humilde, igual que uno, y andaba junto con uno.
A current idea on every corner of his town.
En Chávez está una lectura originalísima de nuestra realidad.
Hugo Chavez, a dreams. On Sunday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Costa Rica goes to the polls on April 1st for the presidential election. It's a closely watched fight after a gay marriage controversy pitted a Christian preacher against the ruling party candidate. Polls showed the frontrunners are tied neck to neck.
Indecision, absenteeism, and a lack of political identity can be the words used to describe this election.
Political players are weak due to the difficulties they face representing the people. There's a growing gap between citizens and political parties.
Now that the parties have held their campaign closing ceremonies, many topics have been left undebated, such as the growing concerns about human rights.
We've opposed same-sex marriage from the start. We haven't budged like some other candidates back in the first round.
Fabricio Alvarado denies accusations that he's exploiting people's religious beliefs to his own advantage.
They've said we're using religion to win votes, but we aren't. We've only told Costa Ricans we plan to be of benefit to everyone, even those who belong to other religions.
In another closing ceremony in San Jose, Acción Ciudadana stressed concepts that matter to the country, both inside and out.
People want to hear peace, democracy, respect for both human rights and the environment when they hear the name Costa Rica.
Many political parties and social movements support Carlos Alvarado and his team.
It's not like any other moment in history when you have all of these political parties trying to help Costa Rica.
The Supreme Electoral Committee officially announced the electoral blackout that comes into effect on Thursday.
We intend to stop political discussion so that voters can reflect on their decision for a final time.
Both parties are neck and neck according to the polls, but we will only know for sure on Sunday, April 1st.
Bolivian President Evo Morales has questioned Chile's commitment to peace. He says military exercises between Chile and the U.S. and the placement of minefields on the Bolivia border had stoked tension. The two countries are in the midst of a maritime dispute where Bolivia is demanding the return of 120 kilometers of coastline handed over more than 130 years ago. Freddy Morales has the details.
Buenos días. El presidente Evo Morales insistió en
President Evo Morales insisted in maintaining dialogue with Chile to solve pending issues. The Bolivian president even suggested a need to restart the diplomatic relations between both neighbor countries, which ended 40 years ago when bilateral negotiations regarding maritime conflicts failed. Towards the end of this legal case, started in 2013 in the Hague International Court of Justice, Morales said he was open to keeping friendly relations with Chile. In 1879, Chile arrogated a territory of 120,000 kilometers, which used to connect Bolivia with the Pacific Ocean. President Morales said that if Chile is still open to dialogue, then there is a chance they could solve other pending issues, like the one related to Silala waters, which is still being processed after Chile started a case in 2016. That conflict has existed for more than a century. Bolivia says that there are more than 70 springs located in Potosi area that 100 years ago were channeled by a Chilean company to build a railroad, and that after that road stopped working, Chile continued to use the territory without paying a single penny to Bolivia. Chile says that they are international waters and are free to use. Both countries wait for these issues to be solved by the International Court of Justice.
Cuban President Raúl Castro met the leader of the Vietnamese Communist Party, Nguyen Phu Trong, on Thursday. Castro and Phu Trong signed off on the cancellation of the Caribbean islands' debt to the Asian nation. Both leaders highlighted the excellent bilateral relations between Cuba and Vietnam at the Havana Palace of the Revolution. They also reaffirmed the historic friendship between the two countries. The Cuban Central Bank has squashed rumors that it is withdrawing one of the island's two currencies from circulation over the coming weekend. In the last few days, there has been a surge in the number of people looking to change convertible pesos into local pesos. Convertible pesos are used in the tourism industry, and the local ones are used to price everyday goods. Cuba has said it is looking at monetary unification, but no date has been set yet.
The start date for the process of monetary unification has not yet been decided. At the same time, the fixed exchange rate has been confirmed as 24 Cuban pesos to one convertible peso with regards to convertible peso sales for those who use our banks. The 7th Congress of the Central Communist Party of Cuba has ratified once again the decision guaranteeing deposits in bank accounts in foreign currencies, convertible pesos and Cuban pesos.
In Chile, the trial against Mapuche leader Machi Francisca Linconao and 11 other Mapuche activists continue. The Mapuche activists are being prosecuted for their alleged responsibility in the deaths of businessmen Werner Luch Singer and his wife Viviane Macay in 2013. The trial takes place after an appeals court invalidated their acquittal. Machi Francisca Linconao supporters denounce what they consider to be an unfair trial. They say this is a deliberate persecution of the Mapuche people who are defending their land.
She's going to prove her innocence in the next trial, and Chile will have to ask for forgiveness. The Chilean state must ask for forgiveness for what it has done against this Mapuche woman. Just because she faced the big companies and businessmen, she has been persecuted, chased, and attacked.
We'll take another short break. Join us after another look at what our multimedia colleagues report. Welcome back. The health of the daughter of former Russian spy Sergei Skripal is improving, and she's no longer in critical condition. She and her father were poisoned in Britain early this month. However, Sergei Skripal remains in critical condition. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, has the latest details.
The daughter of former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal, Julia, has regained consciousness and is talking according to the BBC report. Julia, who along with her father was found unconscious on a bench in the British city of Salisbury, is said by the British government to have been poisoned, and this has blamed from the very beginning the Russian government, something the Russian government has denied again from the very beginning, and accused the UK government of provocation, of creating a diplomatic crisis, and the aftermath of this has plunged relations between both countries to their worst level since the Cold War. So today also Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced that they would be expelling 60 US diplomats as a retaliatory measure for the expulsion of Russian diplomats by the US, and that they would be expelling hundreds of other diplomats from the countries that had expelled Russian diplomats, which has occurred in the aftermath of the poisoning of Sergei Skripal and Julia. As we know, the British government has been extremely forceful in its denunciation of blame towards the Russian government, something the Russian government has denied. It has accused the British government of peddling fake news with regards to the case. So the state, as I've just said, the BBC has announced that Julia Skripal has regained consciousness and is talking, and in the next few hours it is expected that the British police, the counter-terrorism unit, will be talking to her, will be attempting to talk to her to establish more facts around the poisoning. So from London, this is Pablo Navarrete for Telesur.
And let's go back to that story that Pablo just told us. Russia has expelled 60 U.S. diplomats and has closed the U.S. consulate in St. Petersburg in a tit-for-tat response to U.S. action over the spy poisoning case. Earlier, Russia also announced 23 diplomats from the UK will be expelled in response to UK's expulsion of Russian envoys. The announcement comes after 24 countries expelled over 100 Russian envoys after Britain alleged Russia was behind the nerve agent attack in the beginning of March.
Regarding the rest of the countries, there will be a reciprocal number of people leaving the Russian Federation from the body of diplomatic missions. I must mention that we were informed by British authorities about the state of Julia Skripal's health at long last. They say she is recovering quickly, and we again demand to have access to Julia as a Russian citizen. I hope the British side will be able to fulfill its responsibilities.
Now let's look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
A fire on board a bus in Thailand's western province has killed 20 migrant workers from Myanmar on Friday. The bus was carrying 47 workers who had just crossed the border into Thailand from Myanmar. 3 others on the bus were injured, but the rest escaped unharmed. Thousands of people in the West African nation of Ghana took to the streets of the capital Accra on Wednesday to protest the country's new $20 million defense cooperation deal with the United States. Many in Ghana fear the deal gives Washington too much influence over the country's military. The move comes at a time when Washington is becoming increasingly hostile towards China's rapidly growing influence and investments in Africa. French President Emmanuel Macron has offered to mediate between Turkey and Kurdish-dominated Syrian Democratic Forces in northern Syria. Macron has met with SDF members in Paris and assured them of his support and help in stabilizing northeastern Syria against the Islamic State. Kurdish officials also said Macron had committed to sending troops to the region. In response, Turkish President Tayyip Recep Erdogan said France is completely wrong. A defunct Chinese space lab Tiangong-1 is rapidly falling to Earth. Experts believe it could re-enter our atmosphere between Saturday and Sunday. It was launched in 2011, but the Chinese scientists lost all contact with it in 2016, leading to an uncontrolled fall. The space station is over 10 meters long and weighs more than 8 tons. However, experts believe the chances of it injuring human being is very slim. It's predicted to fall somewhere in southern Europe.
Our experience is that for such large objects, typically between 20 and 40% of the original mass of 8.5 tons will survive re-entry and then could be found on ground, theoretically. However, to be injured by one of these fragments is extremely unlikely.
A family visiting the renowned Grand Ruaha Safari in Tanzania were met with an unexpected guest in their vehicle. In a video filmed by the guide, a cheetah is seen jumping into the safari vehicle while one of the tourists maintains his calm. Other passengers also remained silent while the cheetah inspected the hood of the vehicle. No one was injured at this incident. And with this, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.